Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. On this, it's the 28th, Thursday the 28th. Getting close to the end of the year. Hey, you guys, Happy New Year. It's going to be, well, I don't know if it's going to be such a Happy New Year this year, but there is one consolation here for the people out there who are stackers, gold and silver. I think this is going to be the year for gold and silver. But everything else, watching your world melt around you. Quite seriously. And listen, guys, see, there's a button there. It's the thumbs up button. Could you guys please hit it right now? Just go ahead. Straight down there, just hit it. It does a lot for my channel. It'll really maybe start me to growing again on my channel. It helps me be noticed by the YouTube algorithm. So just for a second, real quick, hit that button. Hit the button right now. That's great. Thank you very much for hitting that button. Okay, well, let's get moving on. Let's take a look at what's going on out here. First off, this is a chart of the housing sales, right? This chart goes all the way back to 2001. And, we can see right here in 2020 that it was down low and it made this massive move upwards during the COVID pandemic. And there wasn't any, hard to buy houses even. People, if I don't know if you were out looking for a house during that period in time, you might see realtors having people might buy it right out from under you. There's so many houses being snatched up. Waiting lists for people who wanted to get a house. That's this peak right here where it went up. Almost up to 130. Now it's fallen like a stone. It's fallen down lower than it was pre-pandemic, and it's continuing its slide down. One thing I notice about these charts is, and I've been looking at a number of these charts, things that are falling really fast. They're still falling and are in the process of like falling off a cliff. That's because we're heading into something monstrous. Fed sees this coming now, I think. They're starting to see it coming. That's why they're loosening things a little bit. It could be they're even doing yield curve control right now. Seriously. So I'm going to run through a few of these stories, and I'm going to talk about a few other things. We're going to take a look at a few charts here. So we see housing sales are dropping like a stone. What else do we see? We see the Fed and the money supply, the M2 money supply. It was dropping like a stone, and now I don't know what they're doing, but they're changing things behind the scenes. And the M2 money supply is starting to stabilize. It could be directly into the bond market. I'm just not exactly sure. But I checked their balance sheet this morning, and the total assets by the Fed right now on their balance sheet is, there was this spike up during the Silicon Valley banking crisis, but it's continuing to drop. So it's a little bit difficult to get a handle on exactly what's going on right now. But I see a movement toward them relinquishing somewhat their fight against inflation and moving somewhat toward a more easy monetary policy. But they haven't beat inflation. Inflation, all they succeeded in doing was creating a little bit of what's called disinflation at the peak of what they were doing. They did bring inflation down somewhat. What disinflation is it's not deflation. Deflation is when this is disinflation. It's deflation is when there's absolutely no inflation. You go below the inflation level where there's negative. That's deflation. So there's no inflation. It's below zero. It's like -1. In other words, prices are dropping. Disinflation is when you're seeing inflation lessen somewhat. Okay, and that's what's been going on. But now they're having to give up that fight now at this point because they can see that they're creating a crisis. But it might be too late at this point for them to just say, okay, let's change directions. But they've created that energy, that downwards energy, by one of the fastest rate hike cycles in history. Hiking rates. And how hiking rates affects all this so much, and why it affects all this so much, is because when they hike rates, the cost of money goes up. People can't take out loans, and they've already saturated everybody with debt already. And so this is hard on the banks as well. And so what's probably really moving the Fed now at this point in time is the problems in the banking system itself. It's probably one of the biggest things that's pushing the Fed. Because they really don't care about us. They don't care if they create a crisis for us. But if they create a crisis for their precious banks, that's a different story. And that's what's coming down the pike. The banks, there's like $680 billion in the hole. The banks right now, because they have all these unrealized losses. And so the Fed is saying, hey, you know what? We see too many banks going to be getting in trouble right here too quickly. We see a 2008 style great financial crisis part 2 coming. Let's front run it. Let's get ahead of it now at this point. Let's ease the pedal back, but slowly, because we don't want to startle the markets or anything. And this is the situation we're in right now, sort of. You know? But it's all going to start to come due here in 2024, including the war picture as well. What was this I had on here? Oh yeah, we're going to do the markets right now. We're going to take a look at the gold price. And like I say, I think this is going to be the year for gold and silver. And maybe a bigger year for silver than it is for gold even. So we're looking at a gold price of $20.75 this morning. It was up to $20.80. It's backed off just a little bit, about $5 in the last day or so. $20.75 for gold, which is still high. $24.15 for silver right now. Let's take a look at cryptos and see what they're doing. Bitcoin is at 42,448. Ethereum is at 2370. And XRP is at 62.9 cents. Now it seems like the crypto market's taking just a little bit of a breather, but it's holding its own. It's holding its gains that it made. It hasn't been going up very much today so far. But let's now take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is up 37 points on the day at 37,694 for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We're going to take a look at crude oil. Crude oil is at 73.67. And crude oil is down, I should say, 44 cents or 0.59%. 73.67 for crude today. This is cheap prices, really cheap prices for crude, actually, considering what's going on in the Middle East. Considering how that could flare up at any time. It hasn't yet. It's amazing that the Middle East is held as stable as it is, even though it's not really stable. But it could have blown up into a regional war already, but it hasn't quite. It's just on the edge. Now, the United States, from what I heard this morning, is using F-18s to fight against the Houthis. Now, I got thinking about this for a minute, and I said, well, F-18s, they're using F-18s to fight against the Houthis. Well, the area of problem is in around just off the coast of Yemen in the southern part of the Red Sea. How far can those jets fly sorties, the F-18s, before they have to come back for refueling to the aircraft carrier. So where have they positioned that aircraft carrier? I'm very interested right now. I haven't heard. But they must have positioned the aircraft carrier closer to the trouble so that they could launch the F-18s. Just my what was going on in my head, about this. Moving on to the bond market right now, we're looking at rising yields today. And we're looking at a 10-year at 3.82. It's up 3.7 basis points. And the U.S. 30-year at 3.97. It's up 3 basis points. Well, here's the thing. We've seen a lot of movement down in these bonds. Could it be that they're using these bonds somehow to soften the blow that's coming to the economy? In other words, to almost like a little bit of monetary easing on the long end of the yield curve somehow. But I don't know how they're doing it. I don't see any excess money going on their balance sheet. Could it be something else? Maybe the Exchange Stabilization Fund or something like that. I just don't know exactly what's going on with this. But I do know that these yields, I'm suspicious about it, how these yields have been dropping so much lately. Let's take a closer look at the 10-year just for a second here. On the chart, we're going to have to go into a little bit longer. Does this chart offer? Oh yeah, there we go. So let's go back a little bit. Let's try the 3 months. See these yields falling? You can see we were up at 4.98, almost 5% when they started to fall. And this whole thing has me a little bit suspicious. All this fall here in yields on this 10-year from over the past since 10th 19th 2023. So around October, November, down to now, which is not a long period in time, you can see this immense drop-off in yields on the 10-year. And this 10-year is what they priced dead off of. And I'm suspicious how this is happening because it would be the equivalent of some buyer coming in here and spending a tremendous, or buyers spending a tremendous amount of money in dollar terms to drop these yields down as much as they have, because this is a huge market. This is a market that's like 10 times bigger than the stock market. So I find this interesting. But the yields were kind of attractive at 4.98. Now they're not so attractive at 3.82 after this precipitous fall. Now let's take a look at the U.S. dollar index, and the dollar's going along sideways today. Wanted to talk about something. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has ordered the military to accelerate, in parentheses, war preparations. He just made a trip on that train. You see him on there. He just made a trip to see Putin, and they've been talking extensively. And now he comes back and he says that he has to accelerate the war preparations. You know what side they're on, too. North Korea is on the side of Russia and China. Along with Iran. They're all part of this conglomeration that is the what's I would refer to as the east side of the world. And the west side of the world, over here in the west, of course, we are thinking war too. I mean, both sides have divided sides almost equally. We have NATO on one side and we have the BRICS on the other side. This is a bad setup. And so, does he know something that we don't know? He just come away from that meeting with Putin, and he has to accelerate war preparations really fast. What's all that about? You guys have to figure that out. But I would think just myself, I think that this is serious, very serious, that these war preparations are not just, I don't think they're just war preparations. In other words, I don't think that North Korea is like in a vacuum. North Korea is in that part of, over in that part of Asia, right next to China and Russia. I think their northern borders on Russia, doesn't it? I'm not exactly sure. But this whole thing is like a stew pot. And it's boiling and it's getting ready to boil over into a war, a monster of a war. And so this is one of the reasons why I would really like you guys to push that button, that thumbs up button there, because I'm going to have to start doing some shows. There's new people going to be coming in to my channel, and they need to know how to prepare. I need to go over material I've went over before, maybe in the past, about some of these things. As many people need to be alerted as possible, because there's so many people, there's about 99% of the population out there who haven't got a clue that there's anything up. They're not paying any attention whatsoever. And I mean, it just could be one morning come along and their cell phone's dead. Their power's out. And they possibly live like most people out there. And how most people live nowadays is and I understand this philosophy is maybe some people don't even turn the refrigerator on. They don't have anything in there. They just go and get what they need for that particular day. And that's all they have. They don't have anything in the house for food at all. Now, can you imagine what's going to happen to a person like that? They don't have any food. They don't have any water in the house. Can you imagine what's going to happen to a person like that when the whole thing just cracks up? They might end up dying. Well, at any rate, they would be in a situation like the people in Gaza are in, where you might have to drink toilet water. Of course, out in California, they're already drinking toilet water, but it's been filtered. I can't get into that situation, you know. Imagine. I just couldn't bring myself to drink toilet water, even if it was filtered. Just something about it. In the long term, what would it do to you? I mean, maybe you get away with it drinking it today or whatever, you know, but just something about the idea, you know. At any rate, guys, I'm wishing you guys a very happy New Year's. I hope you had a Merry Christmas. We're going to see what this next year kind of brings, and very soon. We're getting right into it, starting next week. The first quarter of this coming year, I think that we're in for some really big surprises. I think we're in for things that we couldn't begin to imagine that would actually happen unless we've been studying what's really going on in the world. And this is why it's going to take a lot of people by surprise. You know, and I mean, you might have people in your family or whatever that are a part of that 99% that aren't paying any attention. And maybe you've been telling them, you know, hey, you know what, this is this and this is that. But tune them into my channel, because over the next few months, you know, I mean, I'm just going to be putting shows out there that explain some of the things that you need to do in case there is some sort of an EMP attack. And it's so easy with these countries over there making these war preparations. It's so easy for them to basically, and I've noticed this fact about how war is nowadays, is they use proxies. And what we would label as terrorist organizations or whatever could be proxies for, and then they don't take any blame for, because there's nobody to take responsibility. In other words, they can blow up a pipeline. Nobody knows who did it. Nobody ever knows exactly where it come from. Or they could take out an internet cable. Or they could take out a big place a big installation that distributes power. Electricity, or there's a number of things they can do, and not just. And then the country that gets hit by something like that, some sort of an attack, maybe they might not ever know who actually did it. But it's all part of a larger war that's being waged. And don't underestimate how much power that this could have and what effect it could have in 2024. In other words, you don't see it coming. You get blindsided by it. And it might be regional. It might be just your area or your region that's down, but it could look something like that movie that was just produced on Netflix. What was it called? Leave Your Life Behind or something like that. Something to that effect it was called. I don't know, maybe some of you guys have seen it or whatever. It was chilling because it was so, what's the word I would look for? It was so relevant in what we're going through today. That when you're watching the movie, you could just picture it happening to yourself and how you'd be confused and not know where it's coming from or who's doing it, or you're just all of a sudden your life is interrupted and you're basically in the dark. If your phone don't work, your internet doesn't work, maybe your car doesn't even work because the electronics in it have been fried by some sort of EMP or something. Nothing works in your life suddenly. But the sun's still up in the sky. Everything looks normal. Everything looks calm. But you're not calm. You're not calm because nothing's functioning in your life. The things that you ordinarily rely upon. So you try to get down the road. Maybe you'll walk down to the nearby grocery store or whatever, and it just got a sign that says we're locked for today. We're closed. And you're like, what the heck's going on? You're trying to get news, but you can't. Your neighbors don't know what's going on. This sort of a situation could happen. You could wake up some morning into this situation now at this point because we're living in such an unstable world. But then on the other hand, we got 99% of the population who hasn't got a clue about any of this stuff. If they're suddenly struck into the dark the same way, how are they going to react? Are they going to panic? So your friends and neighbors around you might panic. Maybe you expected it. Maybe you said, oh, this is it. This is the SHTF. But what about everybody else out there? How are they going to respond to this thing, especially if it goes on for a period of weeks? They could start to become unhinged. And how do you make your way out? Maybe it's regional. Maybe it's not the entire country. Maybe it's just an area you're in. But that area might be so big you might not be able to escape it easily. The choices that we've made in the past have led us to this unsafe world. But most people don't realize that it's an unsafe world. It's a world that is heading for a fall. And they need to know. So push that button, guys. Let's get those numbers up there for this channel. And thank you guys very much, my loyal subscribers out there. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification icon, that little bell looking thing, so you'll be notified. And hit the like button. And thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys out there. And we'll catch you guys in the next show. And have a great day. Bye-bye.